Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I'm Celtic Templar and welcome back to another how-to video. And today y'all, we are going to be getting into, well, none other than the Germanic Ulfhednar, or as they're also known as the Wolf Warriors of Germania. Now, this is actually a really interesting story and as well, kind of a hard to understand type of story, because one, there's little information about them except for the fact of the people who wrote about them were either the Romans or as well Christian writers. I'll get to that very soon. But yeah, so what were the Germanic Ulfhednars? Well, the Germanic Ulfhednars were actually believed to be the predecessor to the said Viking Berserker. However, there is major differences between the Berserker and the Ulfhednar. The Ulfhednar were actually stated to have fought without any armor. In fact, it's stated that the Romans actually stated that majority of times you saw them bare-chested and wearing tattoos of symbols of their gods upon their bodies. Now, it's cold outside, so I'm not going to do that. So, yeah. However, there are also many accounts that even stated that they fought bare but naked, or wearing without any footwear. I don't know if that's true or not, or if the Romans were just trying to make them look like savages, because one, knowing how Rome is, it's kind of hard to say. But knowing to the fact of how YouTube is, I'm not going to do that. So, yeah. But now, many of you might ask, though, but Templar, I've never heard of the Ulfhednar. What were they? Well, as I said, they were the predecessor to the Viking Berserkers. Now, the Germanic Ulfhednars were stated to be a race of people, or a tribal group. They were pretty much ferocious, demon-like warriors. It's actually stated that when Romans fought against them, the Ulfhednars would actually throw their javelins in mid-charge to pretty much cause their opponents to lift up their shields, to break. In doing so, they would end up having to lift, as soon as they lift up their shields, guess what? That's when the Germanic warrior ends up pouncing on you. Now, the weird thing is, the Ulfhednar actually would somewhat die off during the time of the 800s to 900s. Not because of Rome, but because their tactic was very bad and they wore little armor, or pretty much no armor at all. Well, it was because of Christianity. Christianity, as soon as it took over certain areas, the Ulfhednars were viewed as pagan worshippers and such, since they were actually originally known as the children of Woden, or Wotan, or as we know him as Odin. Now, it's actually stated that these people acted just like the Berserker in such a way and manner. How so? Well, kind of obvious. They would dance around fires and in such. That's like from the movie The Northmen, for example. This gives us a good example of what it would have been looking like. So, technically, that's the best example we got for the Ulfhednar. Now, the movie The Northmen has a good depiction of it, but in such, for historical Germanic purposes and such, it is stated that Ulfhednar fought with hardly any armor on, and during the summer months, they might have actually fought without a tunic, to be bare-chested on the battlefield, to show off that of their devotion to Odin. Now, the majority of the weapons they would have actually used were not exactly swords. They would have hardly ever used swords. For example, this weapon here, I probably took it, plundered it from my opponent, or managed to save up enough, or it's my grandfather's or something like that. But that's the best way I can explain it, because the majority of the time, the weapons they actually used were long knives like this, a sax, or sometimes short-bladed swords. The majority of the times, though, their main weapon were their shield, their spears, and their ferocity on the battlefield. It's actually stated that when Romans actually stabbed into some of their opponents, the Ulfhednar wouldn't exactly die. That's right. An Ulfhednar who took a sword to his gut wouldn't die. That's kind of scary. However, it's not just a sword to the gut. It's actually stated that why one Roman legionnaire who fought during the time of the Marcus Aurelius actually stated that the Ulfhednar fought in such ferocity and cunning and devilish form that they, well, I don't even know how to explain this, but apparently they rushed towards them in such a manner that even when javelins stuck into their shields and even flew into their own bodies, the Ulfhednar kept charging like a ferocious beast of hell. This is why the Romans later named them, well, Hell's Demons, or Hell's Dogs, as they were known as. And in fact, many Romans actually even stated that if you hear some sort of howl in the middle of the night, you must worry that it is the Ulfhednar, because they will charge at you in such ferocious type of form. But, yeah, these guys were definitely horrifying to say the least. So, many people do want to know, though, Templar, why is it that the Ulfhednar is hardly ever talked about? Well, simple. We don't have that much, historical written records. Majority of the time, we only have pictorial evidence, mainly from Germanic culture. And that's it. Now, there is actually this weird story of the fact that apparently the werewolf might have emerged from the Ulfhednar. Seeing the fact that these people called for Odin to, well, watch them in battle. So that gives us a good example. But many people do want to know, though, is what weapons would also they have used? Well, as I said, swords were a very rarity. But however, whenever they captured swords, majority of times it would be gladiuses, Roman spathas, especially the late Roman spatha to be more precise. However, there is the occasional axe they always do use, such as a throwing axe, or as well a cutting axe. Because one, they're normal people, they have to cut down trees in order to survive, to build homes and such. But the majority of times, though, they always use a shield, even though to the fact, sometimes they didn't need it. There are some accounts that state that the Ulfhednar actually charged in such ferocity, they carried a bundle of javelins in hand and such, that they had no way of holding a shield. And the other hand needed to be free to throw every spear. And as soon as they were down to the last spear, they would keep it and such for a distance type weapon when they drew in. So that's saying of how horrifying these guys were. And these guys were shock combat units. So much to the fact that they were actually in every Germanic tribe. The Saxons, the Jutes, the Angles, the Franks, the Lombards and such. So they were technically what you would call a tribal community or clan group, that of which were the fiercest warriors. And the fact is, why did they fight without any armor? Probably because of the fact they could probably hardly manufacture it. Knowing the fact they want most of their metal going to their weaponry, such as their spears. Because one, they have a lack of iron in the said area, probably, or they have less smelting equipment that they hardly have a chance to make certain type of equipment. So, yeah. In fact, some of their stated that some of their bosses on their shields might have actually been bronze, not iron. So that gives us a good example. But why don't we get right into how they would have actually fought, shall we? that video. Now, as you all saw, I was moving freely and such. And, in fact, I felt little fatigue in this type of equipment. Now, I hear many people already saying, but Templar, you didn't take off your shirt. Well, that's my point. It's cold outside. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get hypothermia and all that. Because, one, I wasn't going to walk around with bare feet in open cold weather. That's just insane. And, as well, knowing how YouTube is, I'm not going to take the chance. So, yeah. But many people do want to know is, Templar, why are the Ulfhednars not as well famous as the Berserkers, seeing the fact that they were such ferocious warriors and they fought against the Romans for so long? Well, that's a major good question, but the problem is probably to the fact that, one, the Romans didn't exactly consider them major threats, apparently. Now, this is just a high assumption from many people that believe this. Many people, especially scholars, believe that the Romans didn't believe them as major enemies because, one, they weren't wearing that much armor. Now, it was to my theory, though, that that these guys might have actually worn the pelts as some sort of armor. In other words, they could have put cotton underneath the pelt here. That way it could have captured the blows, especially to the stomach. So that could be a good example. Other times, though, I still believe that they were still the Germanic Berserker. So the Ulfhednar are still the key warriors of the battlefield. Now, here's the thing, though. The Ulfhednars were not just force shock combat type units. They were also the type of warriors that also were used as scouting parties. In fact, there's also accounts of them even riding on horses, and instead of, well, sitting down like normal people would on a horse, they actually stood on it while they threw their javelins. And as soon as they would do this, they would even jump into a frenzy of warfare and just swing their spear around like a 2-meter longsword. That is saying something about how horrifying these guys were. These guys were not to be messed with. But anyways, guys, hopefully you like this video. Like and subscribe for more. If any of y'all have any ideas on what we should do next for our how-to videos, let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to get right into them. Anyways, guys, it's been Celtic Templar. Hope to see y'all in the next one. And have a great day, y'all.